this.
What's up? Welcome to another edition of Chat It Up. Normally we are on location on Thursdays, but as you can probably hear and tell, your boy's a little under the weather. I know Joseph was dealing with it at some points last week or the week before. I've been dealing it for about a week. And then my man all the way to my right, I think this is, my right, Garrett Tolley's back with us. What's up, GT? How are you, buddy?
I'm good, pals. I'm good. It's nice to be back, and it's a little sleep deprived just from babies and
Is that what happens when you have a baby? You're sleep deprived a little bit?
Hey, man, but you know what helped me go to sleep was that goulash from my brother, Uncle G came to town in Ottawa. He brought us some goulash, had some old fashions, and it was so it was good to see you, pal. And
I probably should not have had those old fashions. That's probably what's doing me in a little bit. That late night and the old fashions probably just not good when you're trying to battle getting over being sick.
But Joseph, listen, we were like smoking that thing with like this little wood chips. You know, we were doing a real nice.
Oh, y'all were going all
with the cherries. Ooh, girl.
Y'all were doing the fancy old fashions, the full on, all out.
Respect. Yeah, Garrett, I have a little confession to make.
Okay.
You know how Bliss was asking about like having like more goulash? Is there any more? Do you remember her asking?
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like, oh, I had to split it between like you guys and like Chase and Hannah. And I got home. I don't remember if it was later that night or the next day. I looked in my fridge and I was like, what is this container? And I opened it up. It's a whole other thing of goulash.
Oh, buddy, you listen. You keep it.
Well, I just ate it tonight, so
I did.
But
you did
I
leave
enjoyed
some
it.
Macaroni behind, and so I whipped up some hash green chili mac and cheese. You know, I just used that. Man, I tell you, I know what I'm doing. So
I know you don't know this, Joseph, because you have not experienced it, but Garrett is a wizard when it comes to the kitchen.
I don't know. Okay. I'm not like a little Gandalf out here, but
you in there cooking it up.
I don't know, man. This is what we do, man. We cook, we drink a little wine and throw something on a little music. It's just a good time.
Okay.
It is a great time. And it is also a great time to be a college football fan. Boys, I want to start right off the top with the college football playoff that was released on, what was it, Tuesday night when I was over there. That was the real poll that mattered on Tuesday night. So the college football playoff poll was released, and obviously by this time, like, we all know who's where and whatnot. Everybody's analyzed it, but Joseph, just talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on the first college football 12-team rankings that came out on Tuesday.
Well, we know that the committee doesn't feel great about the ACC. And you can see that in the way that Miami's ranked fourth behind one-loss Georgia and one-loss Ohio State. Technically, I know Miami would get the bye with them being the conference champion, but they do sit behind two one-loss teams. So it tells you that the committee does not value the ACC as a whole. Secondly, in our Substack, we wrote what we got right and what we got wrong. I have seen some allegations. Well, I guess I wouldn't call them allegations because I think they are right. There's been some brand bias in terms of why Indiana was slotted at 8th with a 9-0 record, because many people presented that if it was Georgia or if it was Michigan or if it was Ohio State, if Oregon had the same record as Indiana with the same schedule they played, being ranked, I think 103rd was their strength of schedule, they'd probably be in the top 4. And I get it. I understand it is brand bias. It is 100% brand bias. I personally didn't have any problems with Indiana being ranked 8th because they started out not ranked. No one expected this from them. They still have their biggest game of the season ahead of them, so they still have room to move up. It's not like they're stuck here because they don't really have anybody else left to play. They win that game against Ohio State, they'll probably shoot into the top 5. Other than that, Boise State looks to be the favorite in the group of 5. I'm very curious how they'll slot Army if Army ends up getting into that, 11-0 range, 12-0 range, what they'll end up doing with Army, because they clearly value Boise State's record and playing, even though they have a loss, they played close in a loss to Oregon. They value that much more than anything that Army's done. Now, that could also be them factoring in the fact that Army runs a triple option and they don't really take them too seriously as a contender. Plus, Boise State has Ashton Genty and a Heisman contender. So I'm interested to see what they end up doing with Army if they continue to win. Personally, I don't know how I feel about Notre Dame being ranked over SMU.
I don't know how I feel about that either.
I don't know how I feel about Notre Dame being 10. I would be more so. A lot of people chose to pick on the brand bias in terms of where Ohio State was ranked, or I guess where Georgia and Ohio State were ranked over Indiana, them both being one-loss teams. I feel like it's a little more brand bias with SMU because specifically SMU versus Notre Dame, because SMU's only loss is to, I believe, an undefeated BYU team, and Notre Dame lost at home to a 28-point favorite to a team that is, I think, 4-5. Northern Illinois picked up a win last night over, or they're 5-4, picked up a win last night over Western Michigan. I'm sorry if I'm the only one that's holding that against Notre Dame, but if we're going to hold something against these top teams, Notre Dame by far has the worst loss out of any of these teams. You lost
of course,
at home.
Northern Illinois hasn't even been good this year anymore after they beat Notre Dame.
They are I think they're last in the MAC in terms of MAC standings, and you lost at home. Like, I mean, and some people could just say, "Oh, you're just being biased against Notre Dame." I actually don't feel like I am. I feel like it'd be the opposite if I was being biased for Notre Dame to put them in the top 10 over a team like SMU. I don't want to forget that loss. I don't want to forget losing at home, because if we start to do that, then we start to discount what the early games mean, in my opinion. And I'm going to hold that against Notre Dame. It was a 28-point loss. There was a 28-point favorite that lost at home. And Notre Dame's got to prove it to me. When you get to 11-1, then we'll see about seeding you over SMU and seeing what SMU does the rest of the year. But I personally think Notre Dame should have probably been the first team out.
And so they have, who else is up on their schedule? So they got
Notre Dame's or SMU's?
Notre Dame's. Like what else is on their schedule?
They don't really have much in terms of like a resume builder. Their schedule's not great, which is another reason why I'm even more adamant about holding this loss against them, because your schedule's not exactly a gauntlet, and you dropped a game at home to what should have been an easy victory. Okay, here we go. I got it. The rest of Notre Dame's schedule, they play Florida State, who at this point is just throwing out 11 guys wearing pads and a helmet. Then they play Virginia. They play Army, and they play USC. USC is not what we thought they were. As much as I love the Army story, and I'm, salute to the servicemen, they are still a triple option team. So I'm not exactly going to sit here and pound my chest for Notre Dame if they beat Army. I don't know. USC is not what we thought they were going to be.
Right? There's no championship in a conference. So like
Army or Notre Dame?
Notre Dame. Like they don't even have a championship to go play. When you look at the rankings, like they even have BYU, arguably Big 12 is not the most exciting conference ever, but BYU is playing well there, and they're a top 14, and they have it's probably because they have a legitimate championship in which they're trying to plug some conference champions in there. So I do think they got that right. And so, but to piggyback what you're saying on Notre Dame is a lot of what, you think it was your big point, is that they got to basically just kill it, and they don't have any kind of championship. So they'll never be a top 4 team, at least on this round at any point.
No, unless they change, because we only have this format for 2 years. This is only locked in for 2025 and 2026. In 2027, really depending on how Boise State fares, if this holds the way it is and Boise State makes it, that's really going to tell you how this format fares in terms of auto bids. Because if Boise State rolls out there and gets just absolutely housed, then people will probably revisit having auto bids, and they'll just go with the highest 12 seeds. So then at that point, Notre Dame would have a better shot. I still think if you really want to have the best chance to give yourself that first round bye at Notre Dame, just join the ACC, man. I mean, the ACC is not that great at football right now. Clemson's doing whatever the hell they want to do, which is not helping them at all. Florida State's a dumpster fire right now, and Miami's great. Miami's great, but what's post Cam Ward Miami look like?
Yeah, it kind of feels.
What is that team?
I was going to say, if it feels like if Cam ain't balling, like they're not going to win. Like Cam has to ball to win because the defense is very average. It kind of feels like Tennessee's offense from 2021, 22.
Yeah, it's like if Cam Ward doesn't put them on his back, they lose to Louisville, and they lose to Cal, and they lose to Virginia Tech. So it's like, as much as we love Cam, what's Miami? I'm very curious to see what Miami's going to be like without him. But that's later down the road. We're not talking about that now. We got real football games to worry about. So
do you guys feel like they got it right? Like, do you feel like there was some wildness that you're like, man, I feel like they did some crazy decisions because we're going to announce this in the middle of an election, the craziest election we could have had in probably 150 years. So let's just throw them in there. We're going to throw Boise State in there. F it. That's what I would have done if I would have just got some crazy shit. Now,
well, what's funny is that I don't know if y'all saw this on our story. We posted it, and you can follow us all on social media at Chatted Up Sports. As always, find us wherever you get your podcasts as well. But Ashton Jeanty has scored 21 touchdowns this year. That's more than 18 programs have come total this year so far. That's crazy.
Heisman. He's fallen a little bit behind.
Be, but he won't be.
Well, he's fallen a little bit behind the Barry Sanders record. He's a little bit off pace now, and I think that's simply because they're like, we don't need to run him. We get leads in some of these games, like when they played who was it, San Diego State, I think last Friday night. He didn't need to play the whole game. Yeah. So
that should be taken into account, like how many quarters were played. And I think that could be, I don't know, more comparable to like a Barry Sanders. It's like, hey, he objectively by ratio had a better year.
Preach, brother. Preach.
Amen. I know maybe you don't want to hear it.
I wish the Heisman, the Heisman candidacy was that deep. I wish they were that deep in their determining factors. But it feels like it's always been the player with the most stats on the best team.
Travis Hunter's going to get it.
I hope he does. I hope that, and as much like preseason, Cam Ward was my guy. I hope Travis Hunter gets it because it will really feel like we gave it to the best player instead of just, the best player on a team that won a lot of games. And I mean, Cam is great in terms of what he's done for his team versus what some other Heisman quarterbacks have done for their team. But
yeah, to me, it should be Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, and then it should be Cam Ward. Like, those should be the top three. Like, it should be probably Travis Hunter. I know, Joseph, you and I have been pounding the table for Ashton Jeanty, especially when he was on that Barry Sanders trajectory. But what Travis does playing both ways, and now that Colorado's better, if Colorado was a dumpster fire and they looked bad like they did in the beginning of the year, yeah, you could probably make a case that, Travis Hunter probably should not win the Heisman Trophy. But if Colorado continues to play well, keeps themselves in the top 25, they don't even have to make a playoff, but keep themselves in the top 25, for the rest of the season, and he continues to ball the way he does and doesn't get hurt, knock on wood, like he'll be the Heisman because what he does is really special. It's kind of like what Charles Woodson did back in the day.
For sure. And he is we had visited it earlier in the season when the comments that Travis had said about Ashton had come out, where it's like, yeah, we've seen two-way players before. Charles Woodson was a two-way player, Jabril Peppers was a two-way player, but we haven't seen the level of production that we're seeing from Travis, which by no means is to discount what he's doing. So we have been on the Ashton Jeanty camp, and we've been riding the Ashton Jeanty train, and I still am a little bit. But if Travis wins it, I'm not going to be mad
about that, dude. It's think about how many plays that guy has. Like, that's I get tired getting off the couch sometimes, man. I mean, like this guy is on the field doing both ways. It's crazy. Like, I mean, I think he's probably the most athletic person, I think, in college sports across the whole. Of all, even basketball, all sports. I mean, he's got to be the most athletic. Because I've seen this dude dunk like between the legs, on a court in Colorado. I mean, he's got to be the most athletic guy ever.
But has he ever D'd up Marcus Smart though?
I mean, I would say no, not yet. He says
not
he can't
like you.
I beat him in a game of beer pong. That was he crossed me on the court. So that's a different kind of shot that I'm better at than him.
All I'm hearing right now is you guys are 1-1. Like that's
we need a tiebreaker.
I mean,
I'll take it.
All right, GT, give me your thoughts on the top 12, the college football playoff rankings that came out on Tuesday. Where did they get it right and get it wrong for you in your mind?
They just I think they just got it wrong with Bama. I think they favored them too much. I think Nick Saban still has some pull. I think he's the smiling face of ESPN right now, and they're gonna still reward Bama. It's the strongest brand in college football. I think if they go into LSU and they lose and they have a close game, even if they win, I would just feel like if they had a close game, it wouldn't be enough to convince me that they should be ranked where they are. So I think there's just better teams. I think it's just a brand thing. So I think they got that wrong. I do think
who would you put ahead of them?
Would I put ahead of them?
Yeah, just curious. If you think they shouldn't be in the top 12, they were at 11. Who do you think should be in there ahead of them?
Is recency bias the only thing keeping Texas A&M from flipping with Alabama?
Texas A&M is who I would be like. I'm shocked. They've been in like the number one in the SEC for a good string of time. They lost what? 2 games? 1 game? 2 games?
Yeah. Like if they had lost to South Carolina.
Yeah, they have. Alabama has worse losses, right? They lost to the whole state of Tennessee. You can't have a worse loss as an Alabama fan.
Well,
like if they had lost to if A&M had lost to South Carolina like 2 weeks ago instead of like 3 days before the rankings come out.
South Carolina's a trap game, man. It always has been. That's Tennessee's fans from like 2 years ago.
It's hard to play out there in Columbia at night.
Dude, I think Alabama absolutely shouldn't be there. I think A&M deserves a little more credit. I would put A&M probably at 12. At 12. But man, if Alabama loses to LSU, I don't want to see them back in the top 12 ever again, like for the rest of the year. I just don't think there's any argument for that.
Oh yeah, this is basically an elimination game coming up on Saturday. Whoever loses this game, it's going to be curtains for them. So, I mean, that's what it seems like. And, kind of just mentioning that, GT, let's roll into our core 4 and let's talk a little bit about this game. Alabama going to LSU. Last time they went to LSU in Saban's last year, it was a night game at Death Valley, and Saban came up short against Brian Kelly in overtime. Kelly decided to go for 2, and they, were able to get it, and they walked it off against Alabama. So, Jay, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on Alabama at number 14, LSU. What do you think determines the outcome of this game, and will it be different than last time around we saw this matchup at LSU?
Oh man, well, for me, for what determines the outcome of this game, I think if you're looking at the LSU side, you've got to be able to run the ball. I mean, LSU is last in the SEC at rushing, dead last. And Alabama ranks 14th in the SEC in rush defense. So if you can't come out and at least I'm not saying you have to dominate them on the ground. I'm not saying you have to put up 200 yards rushing and like 6 yards a carry. But if you can come out and you can clip maybe 90 yards, just take any kind of pressure off Garrett Nussmeier, because if you come out and you do what you did against A&M, 23 carries for 24 yards against A&M. And you know what happens when you do that? Garrett has to drop back more. You know what happens when Garrett has to drop back more? He's more likely to throw interceptions. So if Garrett comes out and he has to spin it 50 times, that's more likely that this Alabama defense can take advantage of that, get interceptions, flip the field, get short fields, and get points off of it. So if you're LSU, you have to find any way possible you can to run the ball, to at least rack up. I think at a baseline, you have to have at least 70 yards on the ground. Not from one player, but just combined, any kind of way that you can alleviate pressure on Garrett Nussmeier. And then for Bama, something that I found was interesting. So their first 4 games, they averaged 47 points per game. Now, I know they factored in a game against Western Kentucky and a game against South Florida. And in that South Florida game, the final score was the final score was not how that game went. So, take that to a factor. But in their last 4 games, they've almost cut that in half to 28 points a game. And Jalen Milroe has not been as involved in the run game. In his last 5 games rushing, he has had – hang on, let me pull this back up because I just lost it. He has had 50 yards, 11 yards, 36 yards, and 10 yards. And that's just not enough when you have an athlete like Milroe. Or sorry, that's just Alabama's rushing yards in general in those last 4 games. There's no way when you have an athlete like Milroe that you should be having 11 rush yards or 10 rush yards. Like, you've got to find a way to get him involved because that's his best skill set. Like, he's great at the deep ball. He is. But you've got to be able to utilize his legs because, number one, you're going to extend drives. You're going to keep LSU's defense on the field, and you're going to keep the ball away from their offense. So I think Alabama needs to get back to running the ball and also running the ball with Milroe. Because LSU's giving up roughly 130 yards a game on the ground, which isn't amazing, but it isn't horrible.
Yeah.
So
do you think Bama's going to beat LSU or LSU's going to beat Bama?
That's what I was about to get into. So if I had to pick somebody, there is a factor. Home field advantage is a factor in college football. It's a major factor. Home field advantage for LSU is a different home field advantage, in my opinion. Playing at night in Death Valley, was it Les Miles who said Death Valley is where opponents' dreams come to die?
I think so.
Put that on frame it, dude. Frame that. Like, why do you not have that written on a board somewhere, like etched into the stadium? That is that's coldest line in LSU history.
They may actually have it. I don't know.
I hope they do. If they don't, they're missing out. And, take that, etch it somewhere. Death Valley is where opponents' dreams come to die. And I think Alabama's playoff hopes are going to die on Saturday. I'm rolling with the Tigers because I do think that they're going to put an emphasis on running the ball, and they're going to be able to find at least enough success to where Nussmeier doesn't have to pitch it 50 times. And that obviously leads to him not throwing a bunch of interceptions. I think Kyron Lacey can take advantage of some of these Alabama corners. Give me the Tigers, man, to win a close game over Alabama in Death Valley.
Well thought out. See, ladies and gentlemen, I get my stats from Joseph Guthrie. 3 claps one time across the virtual screen. This is why I joined the show, because I need to learn. So that's the only thing I could bring to you to add, because I think you're right, Joseph, because I'm the guy who's going to come and say it's not about the stats. It's the fact that they're going to put a live Tiger on the field on Saturday. That's what I've read. And I think if you're going to risk having PETA show up to your stadium, you need to make sure that you win that ball game. So I'm gonna give me the LSU Tigers for sure. That's the GT way. So,
oh gosh, boys, this is a tough one. I've been deliberating over this all day long. I had our athletic trainer for the softball team ask me. We were talking a little bit about it today, and my initial thought was Alabama, and I saw ESPN Analytics has them like 70% chance to win this game. Alabama's also been really good on defense and takeaways. They rank, I think it was 5th nationally. That's up from last year, a Saban-led defense, which was 63rd. In the last 3 games, they have 10 takeaways. Grant Nussmeier has thrown 7 interceptions over the last 3 games. But none of that's going to matter on Saturday because the LSU Tigers are going to clap them cheeks, and they are going to win this game at home.
Dude, I think
It's going to be a close one.
You think it's going to be close? I think it'll be close.
I think it's going to be a close one. I think it's going to be like 26-23, something like that. 26-24. Yeah, it's going to be close. Maybe not a cheap clapper.
Go Tigers.
I don't know how that's a cheap clap. I don't know.
I just sounded good in the moment, man. I was just getting hyped. I was trying to let my emotions show through.
Is it just your emotions?
Yeah, it's just my
Yeah.
All right, so we're all on LSU, and from what I've seen already, Miggy is also not. Miggy's the only one not on LSU so far. Chase is also on LSU. Miggy is on Alabama. He's going to stand on that island by himself. If you are currently watching right now, which we appreciate you, if you are, feel free to comment with who do you have in these core 4 games. Since we're not out somewhere tonight, we usually do the big board and we have people at whatever location we're at. It's usually Mike's hole in the wall. Have them come up to the board and make a tally on which game they pick. So we can't do that. Please, if you have a pick, let us know in the comments. Give us your pick for each of these games and we'll tally it up. And that'll be the Gen Pop, as they say. And Garrett is battling with the general population for last place.
Oh, yeah, dude. It's a dicey game. I'm playing at the bottom of our
You got a couple other things to worry about there.
Oh, yeah. But I'm a comeback kind of guy. I'm a string together like an unreal, run here just to beat the general pop like a game. I think it's what it's going to end up being.
Yeah, Garrett likes to come from behind.
Yeah, in sports.
Well, I mean, yeah, duh.
In sports.
In sports.
As a girl dad. Hi, honey.
Yeah. Anyways, now it's weird. All right, let's go to our next one. Let's go to Georgia at Ole Miss. Joseph, this has your name written all over it. Your Georgia Bulldogs have to go to Ole Miss, and that is not an easy place to play. What is that, a 3:30 game? So it's not like
3:30.
Yeah, it's not early. So the fans will be out there and they'll be lubricated out there at Ole Miss and Rebel Land, and the Lane train will have them hopefully firing on all cylinders for the Ole Miss fans in the room.
Yep.
But when it comes to Georgia, obviously they're right up there in the rankings. They've been playing some good football, since their loss to Alabama. What are your thoughts on what's going to determine this game? I know you have your red colored glasses on.
I try to take them. I know
you try to take them off.
Yeah, I try to take them off.
You're usually good about that.
Yeah. There's something that I think when people think of this game, they think of it very similarly to the Texas game. In terms of and I know Sark and Lane don't run the same. They don't run the same scheme, so it's not the same offense exactly. So it's not exactly like a shot for shot remake of the Texas game. But the last time Georgia played in Oxford, it was 2016. It was Kirby Smart's first year. They lost 41-14 to the then Hugh-led Freeze, Ole Miss Rebels. Chad Kelly balled, and Georgia looked horrible. Luckily, we have had some time pass between then and now, and the Dogs are much improved, except for their run game this year. They might want to put out an APB on Kirby Smart's Georgia run game, because it has just not been there this year. I don't know why. It's the weirdest thing. It's the one thing that I thought, as a Georgia fan, if we ever have an odd year, well, at least we'll be able to run the ball. No, we rank 97th in rushing. In the country. 97th. That's not 97th. That's horrible. And especially when your quarterback has thrown 11 interceptions in the last 5 games. So now you're turning the ball over because you can't run the ball. That is just not a factor for success. Yet somehow this team is 4-1 over their last 5 games, turning the ball over like that. Make it make sense? I don't know how it makes sense. But I think with this game, dude, we've beat it to death, man. He's just, at this point, that's what you are. Going into this game, you have to expect Carson's going to, until he doesn't, you have to expect Carson is going to turn it over. And I think this game is going to be won in the trenches. Whoever's front seven makes the most plays. Whoever's front seven sets their offense up with better field position and short fields. So whichever front seven, because the front seven that Ole Miss has this year is probably the best that Lane Kiffin's had since he's been there. With Walter Nolan and Princely, if you ever see this, my dude, I promise it is not intentional. I do not mean to mess up your last name. I just can't read that well. Sometimes I just can't read. Princely Uman Mayalan. I'm gonna take my best shot at that. Sorry, Princely. Chris Paul Jr. and Suntari Perkins. I mean, Ole Miss's front seven is legit, man. They're good. They lead FBS in sacks. They've got 41 this year. One thing that's concerning for me if I'm an Ole Miss fan, Trey Harris is doubtful. He's their leading receiver. And Henry Parrish Jr. is out. So Henry Parrish Jr. is the leading rusher on the team. Behind him, do you know who their leading rusher is? It's Jackson Dart.
Oh, no,
that is not fun. That is not fun. And I don't think Georgia's a team you want to be trying to run your quarterback against unless your name is Jalen Milroe. So that's what I'm concerned with. That's who I think is going to have the edge here. And, man, if we're having to pick a game based off whose front seven is going to play better, there's not many games I'm not going to pick Georgia because Mykel Williams and Jalen Walker have started and C.J. Allen have started to eat this year. Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins has played really well. Kristen Miller's played really well. Chaz Chambliss has played really well. Like, if we're having to pick a game based on who I think's front seven is going to play better, I'm going to roll with Georgia. An interesting stat that I ran across, and this is from Graham Coffee DC on Twitter. Give him a follow. Graham's awesome. Jackson Dart on throws of 20-plus yards against the three best defenses he has played this season. So LSU, Kentucky, and South Carolina. He is 6 for 28 with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. That is boasting a 21.4% completion percentage. That is not a good look because I don't think Ole Miss is going to want to have to drive the ball down the field consistently. They're going to want to push it down the field. They're not going to be able to just impose their will on Georgia's front seven. And I think if they're going to struggle to run the ball with Henry Parrish being out of the game, then Georgia's just going to be able to, not have to load the box. And I think that's going to spell doom for Ole Miss. So for that reason, man, give me the dogs. Give me over-under of before I start sweating in the game at about 45 seconds. And or if whenever Carson throws his first interception of the game. I'm going to roll with the dogs, man. I think it takes a special performance from a quarterback and from an offense to beat Georgia. If we have seen anything, we have seen that when Georgia loses, they lose because somebody had the game of their life or they popped off. And I don't think Jackson's going to be able to replicate what he did last week, throwing for 515 yards because you're not playing in Arkansas, brother. I know you're at home, but this is Kirby Smart and this is Georgia. So give me the dogs, man. I don't feel great about it. I don't because
do you
this
ever
is not
like
no. Well, especially because if anybody's going to have if you would have told me Carson's going to throw 3 interceptions against Texas, I would have told you that Georgia's going to get blown out. We're talking the way that they lost the 2021 SEC title blown out. I would have thought that Texas would have done that, but they didn't. And I know it's not the same scheme, and the transitive property is not something that you should reliably use when picking games. But I mean, if they can get pressure on Quinn against Texas's O-line, I don't see why they can't get pressure on Jackson Dart against Ole Miss's O-line. So I think Jackson's going to be running for his life, and if I have to pick somebody, I'm going to pick the dogs. So.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think that kid's last name, Dart. You think you think he would be a pretty good runner, Probably would be running.
He is. He can spin it. He can spin it, man.
He can throw darts.
Yeah, and he's not shy of contact. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say I'm not saying you don't want to run Jackson because he's afraid to get hit. Kid's not afraid to get hit. He will lower his head and hit somebody. But he did it last year, and I think he got up seeing stars at one point. So.
Or some little cartoon birds or whatever it may be.
I was thinking this. What other Looney Tunes?
Tweety bird,
Yeah.
Go in there.
Yeah.
All right, so Garrett, what are you thinking in this matchup?
I think Joseph, you said all the right things at the end. I just think it's gonna be close, and I'm like I haven't been paying too much attention to Georgia or Ole Miss as far as my viewing pleasure is concerned. I did watch the Ole Miss game last week against Arkansas because I picked Arkansas and thinking that they're gonna, for whatever reasons, replicate what they did against the Vols. It's not hard to come off a big game and have a little bit of magic. I don't think it is. I think you can absolutely carry that momentum. And I looked at the spread. It's like 2.5, right? I mean, it's not like a large spread. So we're talking about just wind blowing in just slightly the right direction for a field goal or whatever for this to go any direction. So I think Ole Miss absolutely could roll with how well they looked. And like you said, how poorly Georgia is consistently winning the games. I don't know. Carson Beck, I have no faith in that dude. I feel like he throws picks all game long, and then he just whips out a trap card and just says, hey, we're going to somehow win this game. I don't know how that works. You can only have so many of those games. So are you going to do it in Oxford? Is it a night game?
No, 3:30.
It's a
night game.
Okay. So, I mean, if it was a night game, it'd feel a little better. But Ole Miss, man, I still think that's where I'm going to go for this. Just to switch it up.
Okay, I appreciate the switch up. Jay, I wanted to ask you this. You talked about Carson Beck, and we've beaten it like a dead horse in terms of the interceptions that he's thrown. You started the conversation talking about how lackluster the run game's been for Georgia. I would assume you believe that's got to have a big factor on putting more pressure on Carson Beck to have to throw the ball when they can't run it. I feel like it would be like the same issue with Tennessee if they didn't have Dylan Sampson. If they weren't able to run the football as well as they have been, I bet you Tennessee would not be this good. Tennessee would be like a middling team at this point if they couldn't run the football.
Yeah, it's rough, man. It's definitely, and one thing they flashed in the Florida game, and I wish I would have taken a picture of it because they flashed Carson's stats when he was pressured versus when he wasn't pressured, and his I think he was like, gosh, I wish I would have taken a picture of it because I don't want to butcher it, but he was in the like 70 to 80% completion range when he was not pressured, but then when he was pressured, he was down at like I think at like 40 or 50%. And Ole Miss is a high pressure rate team. So it's totally understandable to think that what Florida did to Carson, Ole Miss and their front can do to Carson. So I mean, I'm just, at this point, I'm holding out hope that either they can finally establish a run game, which is not a front seven that you want to establish a run game against, or the version of Carson that I saw last year is somewhere in there, and eventually it's gonna click, and he's gonna be like, oh, I remember how to do this. But I mean, I guess I'm just, there's a reason SEC Shorts has a running joke about Georgia fans and hope. So here we are.
Yeah, there certainly is. When it comes to this game for me, Lane Kiffin is 7-9 against nationally ranked opponents since he got to Ole Miss in 2020. And this is exactly what Georgia is. They are a nationally ranked opponent. And Lane Kiffin, it seems like, I know he had that one game earlier in the year where they came up small and they lost the game they shouldn't have lost. I know this game is in Oxford. I know this game is at home. But they're missing their leading running back, as you mentioned, Joseph. Georgia's getting a little healthier on defense. Jalen Walker and Michael Williams are back. And the Rebels' 2 losses this season, they gave up 10 sacks. Georgia's going to come hungry, as Kirby would like to say, right? They were here to eat when they went to Texas and won. We're here to eat,
man. Yep.
They're going to eat Jackson Dart alive in this game. They are going to roll the Rebels in Oxford. Give me the Georgia Bulldogs in this one for sure.
Man, I feel like that's just such a cop-out. Like, such a cop-out.
Dude, it's one of those.
Okay, well, that sounds like you won 7 times. I don't think you could use that argument.
He's not very – well, I mean, he's not great against nationally ranked opponents. And Kirby hasn't lost to anybody not named Alabama since 2020.
Sounds like
history's on their side.
I know.
It's not going to happen until the college football playoff.
You know something.
Unless it's Tennessee.
The odds of something happening is greater when it hasn't happened before, right? I mean,
the odds are going up.
The odds are going up. They're going to have
odds are going up.
Kirby Smart can't just only lose to Alabama. So, man, give me the Ole Miss Red and Rebels, baby. Come on.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's if Jackson Dart plays up to Jackson Dart's potential, I mean, I think he can have a game where he could lead them to victory.
Yeah,
like Quinn Ewers did.
I mean, we saw the picture of Quinn and Arch.
Them alive.
Yeah, we saw the picture of Quinn and Arch on the bench, man. And I don't think anybody here would take Ole Miss's O-line over Texas's O-line. Maybe I'm wrong. But I mean, this just feels like a Glenn and Kirby special. I mean, ESPN's got Ole Miss favored to win. You're down to you're a 2.5-point favorite, which basically means like no one believes in you. It's like, I don't know, man. This feels like a Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann special where they're like, let me just remind you. And I'm not gonna if Ole Miss, I would rather deal with Ole Miss proving me wrong than fading Kirby again because they're not playing a team with a script A on their chest. So
shout out to our friend Megan Grace Thomas living with me and the Ole Miss Rebels.
Yeah, big rolling with the dogs this week. Not next week, but this week we're rolling with the dogs.
Next week's gonna be
a different story.
Next week's gonna be fun.
Yeah, next week is going to be a really fun time. Let's continue to roll here on our core 4 matchups. All right, next one up, we have let's stick in the SEC. Let's go with the South Carolina Gamecocks. Beamer ball absolutely dominated Texas A&M in that game last Saturday. They're going to Vandy. They're going to Nashville, Smashville, to play one of the hotter teams in college football and one of the more fun stories in college football in the Vanderbilt Commodores. According to our man Jamarius in our latest reel, Vanderbilt ain't shit, so it is what it is. But Joseph, talk to us, start us off. Tell us a little bit about this matchup, how you're feeling one way or another.
Oh man, so I'll be honest with you boys, I don't have the full stat breakdowns for this one like I had for the other games. I'm kind of riding, I guess, a little loose and shooting from the hip when it comes to this Vandy game. But where this comes to me, or where this game comes down to for me, is the offense that Vandy runs with this like spread option kind of look that they do with Diego Pavia. I feel like it's really fun, and it looks, it gives some trouble to some teams that don't really know how to prepare for it and aren't the most prepared for it. But then there's just a point where you hit an athleticism gap, and I think South Carolina's D-line meets that athleticism gap with Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart, where they can just be like, oh yeah, we get what you're trying to do with Diego, but you can't block me. So I'm just going to live in the backfield. And I think that with the way that you watched South Carolina be able to deal with Marcel Reed and Texas A&M, especially with them coming out and committing to Marcel Reed and running that style of offense, and Colin Klein being like, hey, I ran this in college. I know what I want to do. I can run this with Marcel Reed. And South Carolina was just kind of like, okay, we're going to eat you for breakfast. Like, we're going to eat you alive. And I know it was juiced up. It's a night game. This game's at Vandy. But I think I'm going to roll with South Carolina as much as I might regret it, because there is a very good chance that South Carolina could just South Carolina themselves out of this game. And we have Lenore Sellers miss a read option with Rocket Sanders, and Vandy recovers a fumble, and here you go. And South Carolina just has we almost got them one more time this year. But no, I think that version of South Carolina is kind of behind them this year. So I'm going to roll with Lenore Sellers, and I'm going to roll with Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart. Give me South Carolina, man. to beat Vandy at home and to break some Commodore hearts.
I think they're favored, right, in this game.
They are. They're favored by 3.
See, and that's where they go wrong. You can't pick the team that's favored that close. Even I just did with Ole Miss.
Way to go against your own logic.
Hey man, listen, my logic is only as good as the pain I'm on my side of the screen. So I like your pick. I think it's a good pick. The only thing is that Vandy has proven that when they are the underdogs, they show up. They show up. And those boys, they got NIL deals with no income tax. South Carolina boys, they got income tax, baby. So they're going to the bars after the game don't go as far. So those Vandy kids, they're trying to have a good time, use a little bit more of that NIL money and show off. And so they're not going to lose at home at night. Not when Broadway's right down the street and you got a little extra in your pocket because you got no income tax in Tennessee. Give me the Vanderbilt Commodores, dog. It's done. Give it to me. That's what I got.
I love it, GT. I love it. Diego.
Logic, right?
yeah, very, very sound. I like where you're coming from. For me, when it comes to this game, I know South Carolina's coming off this incredible win against Texas A&M. It was at home. It was at night. It seemed like the perfect storm. I know that South Carolina has played Alabama on the road very, very tight. They got destroyed at home by Ole Miss. They also lost a close one at home to LSU. But as you said, Garrett, this game is on Broadway. This game is in Nashville. This game is at a weird start time. It's 4:15, which should be about, 3:15 local time. A little bit of a weird. So it'll be nighttime, by like halftime because the clock rolled back and whatnot. But the Vanderbilt Commodores beat Alabama at home this year. They played Texas to a 3-point loss in that game. Give me the Vanderbilt Commodores in this one as well. Diego Pavia and company are just fun to watch. And as you said, GT, they seem to show up when the chips are stacked against them. They seem to be not highly stacked against them in this matchup, but they're at home and they've beat better teams at home and they play tougher teams at home than they're going to face against South Carolina in this one. I know they're coming off that big momentum win. I don't give a damn. I'm going with the Vanderbilt Commodores. Go Doors, baby.
Is that what is it? Go Doors?
Anchor
Doors.
down, baby.
Anchor down?
Anchor down.
Anchor down. Yep.
You feel like Hodor. Like, remember that Game of Thrones? Yeah, I can just see that being total.
Did you just call Vandy Hodor?
I don't know.
Garrett's sleep deprived. He doesn't.
I love that. I love that
right now.
You
have no idea what you just did for me.
I'm just going off of my gut right now. I'm just going
incredible.
Off that dad instinct.
Just absolutely incredible. Love everything about it.
Great job, GT, as always. All right, let's go to our final game. Colorado at Texas Tech. Colorado is ranked. Texas Tech is kind of what they are at this point. It's been a fun turnaround. We've talked about Colorado and we've talked about where they've come from and how good Travis Hunter is. And Shedeur, it seems like, is flying under the radar a little bit. And Dion is not as boisterous as he was a year ago with this program, but they've got him to 6-2. They're 4-1 in the Big 12, and they're facing a tough test out there in Lubbock, Texas, against Texas Tech. They're 6-3, 4-12 in the Big 12. Jay, talk to me about this matchup. What are you thinking?
Oh man, I've been trying to get a read on this Texas Tech team, and it just feels like every time I get any kind of confidence in them or I start to doubt them, they prove me wrong. Like they let Baylor drop 59 on them. They lost to TCU by a point, and then they come out and they beat Iowa State at Iowa State. Like, so I'm staying off the Texas Tech because I can't get any kind of consistent feel on this team. I don't know which version of them is going to show up. And if I've seen anything this year, I've seen myself get proven wrong about Colorado. And I'm not going to find myself on the end of that rope at the end of this game. So I'm going to roll with Shedeur, and I'm going to roll with Travis Hunter, and I'm going to roll with Colorado to go into Texas Tech and beat the Red Raiders after coming off of a massive upset of Iowa State. And Colorado moving one game closer, man. One game closer to that Big 12 title game. And if they're moving one game closer to that Big 12 title game, moving one game closer to the playoffs. And I never thought they'd be here. I thought they'd be good. I thought Travis would be good. I knew Shador would be good, but I thought the rest of the team's not there. They don't really have it like that. I was wrong. They've improved on defense. They've improved on the line. Shador actually has time to throw now. And if Shador has time to throw, I think he can pick apart Texas Tech.
Easily.
But give me the Buffs, man. Give me Colorado.
Yeah.
Close. Maybe like 31-27.
No, it won't be that close.
You don't think so?
No. If it was a night game, I've grown up.
It is kind of a night game. It's gonna be night when the game's finished.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it gets dark at 4:30. Like,
well, let's see. So
it'll be 3. It's a 3
time.
o'clock. It's a 3 local time game.
It's 3 o'clock their time, so the game probably ends around 6:30. But why I say night game is that in Lubbock, if the game is ending around 9 or 10, all bets out the window. Texas Tech could beat the number 1 team in the country if they play this. If they start the game at like a 7:30, but
they did
at 4 o'clock. I don't think so. Texas Tech, they don't have the offense. I've watched them many a times this year as a Big 12 guy. Watched them. They just don't have the offense that you would expect from a Texas Tech. Because they've always had Cliff Kingsbury. They've always had like a Pat Mahomes shootout style offense, and that's just not there this year. Colorado's got 2 of the best players in the entire country and the 2 most paid players in the entire country. And I don't see how you go into Lubbock at a 3 o'clock game and lose that one with as much minimum as they had behind them. The only reason why they won that Iowa State game was because Iowa State played horribly. So I just don't think Colorado's going to go in there and play horribly. The only game they really lost is a very close one to Kansas State. So with that being the case, and because I watched the Baylor-Texas Tech game too. Baylor, that was like got Sawyer Robertson really like going. So I think that was really just a happen chance situation. But give me the Buffs. I think you're right. I think that they're going to take it and take an ever so slight step forward to playing BYU in the Big 12 title game.
And they're coming off a bye week, so a little bit extra rest for the Buffs.
Yes, absolutely. I hate to make clean sweeps here, but based on everything that you guys said, I know, GT, I'm going to take your word for this one because I know you pay attention to Big 12 football, and you know what you're talking about when it comes to that. You might be talking crazy on some other things, but Big 12 football, you know what's up. That means Shador Sanders and Travis Hunter, they're the best 2 players on the football field. That's why Colorado is going to win. And like you said, Jay, they've just looked better than we expected. It's been a long time since they've looked terrible against Dylan Raiola and that Nebraska Cornhusker team. Second game of the season, they have figured some things out. They've been playing a really, really good style of football. They're going to continue to roll, and Miggy's going to be one step closer to being right about his preseason Colorado prediction. And I hate it for all of us because we're never going to hear the end of it, but it is what it is. We love you, Mig, wherever you may be, somewhere, parts unknown out there in Knox Vegas.
Yeah, he's like a little crow, man. He just like flies around. I never know where he lands.
Is that what crows do?
Most birds do.
Most
Most birds. Penguins don't. They don't.
They sure don't. Are they considered birds then if they don't fly?
Birds. They're flightless birds.
They're flightless birds. There's literally a whole demographic of You cannot discriminate against a flightless bird. Don't do that to them.
Chickens are still birds.
All birds matter, dog. Come on.
I'm just curious. I didn't know. I'm not well versed in that subject.
I know, but like penguins, man, that's so fun, dude. Love penguins.
I love penguins. How can you not like penguins?
Dude, you watch them walk?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, they're great, dude. Happy Feet. Like they made a whole movie about it. Not even one human being in that movie, or a diversified animal group. You had.
It's like Cars. Not
like
one
Cars?
human being in that movie.
No, but there was different cars.
Yeah,
there's different types of cars, different levels.
But they're all cars.
But all the penguins looked the same, to be honest. Most of them did, at least. So it was a single. What's the right word for that? group of penguins. I don't know.
Species?
Species. There you go.
Or
That's
I guess
good.
no, they'd be no, because they're penguin.
The penguin is the
Penguins
species.
would be the species, so it'd be like, yeah. I don't know the word.
Family? I
I
don't know. Familia.
I can't think of the word.
Family. All right.
Cody,
Anyways,
Cody's this, Cody's that. Cody's me, bro.
I didn't
Anybody
know
catch that? No, damn.
yeah, that just went right over
Surf's
our heads.
up,
I
dog.
wish.
No surf's up, love.
Man, I don't know what year you think I was born.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Dude,
and I hate it. What are you talking about?
Surf's up, man. It's a film about a penguin that's a surfboarder. It came out in like 2007. Never mind.
I just started watching the
I'm
X-Men
done.
series of movies.
There you go.
Yeah, I never watched all of those. So I'm going from the start to the finish. I'm going to watch. There's more X-Men movies than I thought there were.
Yeah, there's
There's
whole
a lot of X-Men movies.
You should watch X-Men 97. Yeah, you should go back and watch the original animated X-Men and then watch X-Men 97 because it's more comic book accurate.
Okay,
it's very good.
I just like Googled like how do I watch these movies in order, and I'm just gonna go through that. Do you think I need to watch the series first?
I mean, you don't have to. It's just like the movies are good, but if you want a more source material accurate version, the cartoon's going to be more accurate to how the comics were played out.
Did those logins work?
I don't know. I hadn't tried them because I just got into X-Men. It's on Disney Plus.
Okay.
But I will try them.
I was like, yeah, X-Men's not on those logins, but
no. Nope. I decided to go a different route last night because your boy went to bed hella early, trying to get some rest. I don't remember the last time I've been able to sleep all the way through the night. It sucks.
Oof.
I know, Garrett, you feel my pain. I get it, but you're actually, you're dealing with another human life. I'm dealing with chest congestion and nasal congestion and sore throatness. Anyways, there was another big thing that happened in college football today, fellas. Did you catch it?
That I read something that the Donald Trump presidency is going to cause some problem with NIL. That's the only thing I really read. Like that could be big.
Nope, not that. Joseph, did you catch it?
I don't think so.
Billy Napier is staying at Florida for another year. AD Scott Strickland said Billy will be back. We've been talking about that as well. I thought that was huge news because everybody just assumed, well, shit, Billy Napier is going to be out of a job after this year. But we were talking a lot about it. This team has showed a hell of a lot of fight, and they're on their third string quarterback right now. And honestly, Graham Mertz and DJ Langway getting hurt and that team continuing to fight might have been the best thing for Billy Napier's job security. Because, I mean, shoot, you don't have your top two quarterbacks for half of the season.
Yeah.
What do you expect out of the guy? And he's still already won 4 games, and he probably will win at least 5.
Yeah, I'm thinking he'll get at least one of these games against somebody that. Well, we know he's going to get Florida State. I'm thinking he can get one of these other games.
Yes,
that we might not be expecting. I think it's I don't know. I know Florida fans might not agree with me, but I think it's a good thing for Florida because it's the coaching carousel. I feel like it's really easy to get caught up in from what is the coaching carousel and becomes a coaching like hurricane where you're just cycling through coaches every few years. I saw somebody had tweeted out or Rivals had tweeted out and he actually retweeted it. Dan Mullen's record versus Billy Napier's record after 3 seasons and after 4 seasons. I don't know if y'all have known this, but Dan Mullen has been kind of on a tear in terms of retweeting things that are taking stabs at Florida and how bad they've been since Dan Mullen left. I know they weren't great in his last year, but he does have the Kyle Trask season to hang his hat on, even though Shoegate kind of cost them. So
who throws a shoe? Seriously.
Come on, man. What are we doing?
Against LSU. We'll never forget that.
Yeah. But I think it's a good thing. I mean, at this point now, with that statement coming out, all eyes shift to the recruiting class.
Well, that's what I was thinking, man. They don't even have a recruiting class. Like, I mean, that's usually the biggest drawback to like letting it is that you lose all the recruits and all the effort and all of that. But like, I'm looking at their recruiting rankings. I mean, they're kind of in the mix with. They're at the number 12 ranked recruiting class for the 2024 class, which I think was this past year.
That was the past cycle because that was DJ and them.
In 20
No, in 2025 they're outside the top 50, which is not acceptable in
Yeah.
Florida. But they're actually sitting right at 51. They do have 1 5-star recruit, but I think a lot of that, I think a lot of the way that their current recruiting class is setting up is a lot of recruits probably don't want to commit to a guy they think is going to get fired in
That's
a few
a good point.
months. So I think now that they've kind of shown the recruits like, hey, Billy's here to stay. Like, if you come here, if you commit to here, you can know without a shadow of a doubt you're going to be playing for Billy Napier. I think you could see the recruiting class start to tick up a little bit. And I think they also did that, or at least Scott Strickland did that for DJ Lagway. Because by committing to Billy for another year, you at least tell DJ, like, hey, your guy's here. The guy you want to play for is here. Don't enter the you don't have to enter the transfer portal. Like, Billy's not going anywhere. So I think you could see the recruiting class tick up. They have 11 commits right now. They're probably going to want to be in that 20 to 24 range. If they manage to flip some guys, I think you've got to be at least, realistically, you've got to be at least top 15. Which live in the state of Florida should not be hard to do. It should not be hard to recruit a top 15 recruiting class in the state of Florida. Like,
especially how bad Florida State has been.
And especially like,
I know Miami's been
is
better,
what Miami is. Yeah, but the thing about Miami is even with it's Mario Cristobal. Like, he recruited well at Oregon. He just was kind of, I don't want to say didn't do anything with it, but you could argue that he underperformed a little bit with how well he was recruiting at Oregon. He'll recruit at Miami. Like, that's just going to happen. That's what he does. That's what Mario Cristobal does. His on-the-field coaching decisions up to this point have been what have led him to underperform. Specifically, last year losing the Georgia Tech game was just a shit show. But yeah, if you're Florida, and now that you're Billy, I think you can turn your full focus to the recruiting class, because at this point you're playing the season for, I don't want to, you're playing the season for a lesser bowl game. I still think bowl games matter, and I still think players should care about bowl games. But you really need to put some kind of confidence into Florida fans for the offseason so they can show up for next year with at least some kind of hope. DJ in year 2, we've got some hot freshmen. Like, you got to get in the top 15.
Yeah, seems fair. You have to. And I think that's a great point that you mentioned about DJ Lagway and wanting to retain him, because that was a conversation that we had early in the year when we were thinking that Billy Napier might get let go, especially after some of the early bad losses that they had. Was, if you do that, you're probably going to lose this prized freshman quarterback that you had in DJ Lagway. And Graham Mertz had started to play better before he had a season-ending injury. So it would have been interesting to see how this team would have performed if Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway still remained healthy. Montrell Johnson also hurt, one of their better running backs from that he brought over from Louisiana. So yeah, just a lot going against Billy. I'm glad that Scott Strickland decided to just give him a little job security there and a little vote of confidence and say, hey, look, we're behind you. We want you to come back. And I hope he's able to turn it around there, because you guys know, like, I worked with him. Like, I know he is a good man, and he turned around that Louisiana team in a couple of years after what's the guy's name? I can't think of his name right now. Did not leave it in a good way. The guy that was there before him. Yeah, was that good dude?
Was that Rich Rodriguez at Louisiana before?
You talking about at Louisiana?
Before Billy Napier?
No, it was golly, I can't remember. I can see his face.
Can't remember his name.
He was a guy who went and coached tight ends, I believe, at
Michael State.
Who?
Michael
Desormeau's there now.
He's there now?
Yes. The guy before Billy Napier. Come on, IT. You got this, GT.
No, I'm going quick. I'm a client-facing guy.
I know. You got this.
Hudspeth.
Yes, Mark Hudspeth.
Okay.
Yes. He went to Austin P for a little while. He was the head coach there for a little while. And
shout out Clarksville. It's Clarksville. Shout out. Tennessee.
Yes. Yeah, I've never been to Clarksville.
Not a whole lot out there, buddy.
No.
Yeah,
you don't go to Clarksville. You get sent to Clarksville for work, and then you go back home.
They've also Florida's also got something positive. I know you mentioned Montrell Johnson. They've also got something positive in Jaden Ball. He's been really good in Montrell Johnson's absence, and he's also just a freshman. So he's probably there as long as Billy's there.
Yeah, they want to keep their talent in the system and in the program. It takes a lot to bring in a new coach and a new staff, and you got the buyouts and all that stuff. It's a lot. Anyways, anything else on college football that caught y'all's eye that you wanted to get into? Otherwise, I wanted to make a quick shift to the NFL here before we wrap up, because I know Garrett's got to get back to the baby, and my voice is hanging on by a thread. Anything else, college football, Jay, that you wanted to get into?
I've got one thing, but it's not
Sure.
football related. The college football world lost someone very near and dear to them today. If you guys haven't seen the very heartfelt post that he had, Ben is no longer with us.
Oh, yes.
Kirk Herbstreit's dog that had been traveling with him.
Call.
Ben Herbie gained his wings today. So obviously, you know what it's like to lose a pet. It feels like losing a family member, man. The amount of posts that I saw today for Ben from just various figures in the sport and teams, you could tell that he was very loved. And shout out to Herbie, man. I haven't actually gotten a chance to listen to the Thursday night game, so I don't know if he's on the call. I would imagine he is. Knowing Kirk, I'd imagine he's still working. But just prayers up for Herbie, man. It's never easy to lose a pet, so we're hoping the best for him. And the college football hearts are a little low tonight, so that's the last thing. That's the last thing I wanted to finish with as far as college football goes. So shout out to Kirk, and we'll miss you, Ben.
Also,
yeah, absolutely.
We also losing Kessling from his job, but the voice of the Vols, he's also announced his retirement today.
Oh,
so the voice of the Vols after the 24-25 basketball season, he will know the voice of the Vols will be retiring. So that's another loss for not by body, but by
college athletics. Yeah.
By college athletics.
Yeah, and the Tennessee fan base for sure. That's going to be a big chair to fill for sure, or a big mic to fill for sure. All right, let's move over to the National Football League, and right now, I'll just give you a little quick updates on the Thursday night game. They're gridlocked at 7 with a little over 3 minutes to go in the second quarter, and Burrow not terribly efficient in this game. Chase Brown has the touchdown, and when it comes to Lamar Jackson, he's been more efficient, but hasn't racked up that many yards. And he's thrown a touchdown pass to Nelson Aguilar. Derrick Henry not quite doing Derrick Henry things just yet. 6 carries for 22 yards. But we'll keep our eye on that for sure for the rest of the game. I wanted to ask you guys a question about games overseas. We've got a Germany game in Munich. The Giants and the Panthers. We just continue to send shit overseas to play football. Do you guys are you fans of overseas games? Do you like it? Do you like the concept of like football starting at first thing in the morning when you wake up and it basically till you go to bed at night? What's the feeling there, GT, on overseas games and early morning football?
I mean, listen, I love early morning football. I'm just not going to wake up to watch the Giants. I don't think even New Yorkers would wake up to watch the Giants. So I think, if you look at the UK, like football, like soccer, like in the mornings is massive. Like people love that. Like they do their whole day with that. Even here, like you have massive followings for UK Premier League soccer right in the morning. And so people love morning sports, waking up, having coffee, watching that. And so I do like the overseas games. I really do. I think that there's a lot of fun. I see the idea of why you would want to go send your teams to a different country to build the brand of the NFL. I just don't think you need to be going to Germany. I don't know if y'all saw the news today, but like Germany's coalition collapsed, so I don't know if that game's even going to stick if they don't actually, get a government in place. So, so I don't know. You got to be picky and choosy about the countries that you go to, and Germany backs up right against Ukraine. So, like, why are you going all the hell out there? And I mean, can we not find maybe a closer, less dangerous place for our players? I don't know. I'm not saying Germany's dangerous. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's a lot of political turmoil in the world, and I just think that these overseas games, there's a lot of risk that comes with it for the sake of the brand. And so I that would be my other flip side of the coin, thinking about the players, where they going, make sure the country's match where they need to be.
Jay, how do you feel about it?
I mean, I like them just because I like waking up and having football on immediately. I don't have to wait until 1 o'clock in the afternoon for games to start. So I'm a fan. I kind of, from a player standpoint, it's got to feel a little weird with different time zone and jet lag and things like that, going all the way to Europe to play a game. It kind of feels like the NFL, and maybe I'm wrong, but it kind of like, am I the only one that feels like the NFL is putting these games out there, but they're kind of putting the scrap games out there? Like the Jags were over there twice.
They're just testing the fan bases out there, see if they even.
Well, yeah.
Well, I know they
said.
They had Green Bay and Philly go to Mexico the first game
Brazil.
of the year.
That's
so much closer. Like, I mean, that's just like, but if you think about when the Premier League comes over here, how many Americans really know how well those teams are doing in their respective, standings? Very little. I mean, it's more just like, hey, we're going to go over there to get some exposure. Same concept. We're just like, we want to show Germany what the NFL looks and feels like. And so, I mean, but why you're not going to send Pat Mahomes? That's your star.
No.
It's not worth the time.
You're not gonna put like the Chiefs and the Lions, or like you're not gonna ship them out to play a London game or something like that. So, I mean, I'm for it from a business standpoint. I understand, growing the brand, making it international, and it's something to do that you don't get to do a whole lot over there. If you're, if you live in Europe, it's like, how many times do you get to tell people you went to an NFL game without traveling to America? Like, you don't have to spend, near the money it would take to fly over here. So if you're a fan of, like, because I'm sure, just like there are Premier League fans over here, there are Real Madrid fans, there are Barcelona fans, there are Arsenal fans that live in the United States, and they follow it avidly. I've got some people I work with that's their favorite sport, is like Premier League soccer. So as much as the time zones are weird and it's a little hard to follow because of that, they still follow it avidly. So I'm sure that exists in Europe. There are some fans that are avid NFL fans. They follow a team. They have a favorite team. They follow the sport. So I think it's good for them, because it's like, hey, instead of paying $2,000 to fly to Atlanta to watch the Falcons play, the Lions or something, I can, pay $40 for a plane or for a train ticket and ride over to Munich, and at least I'll get to see an NFL game. So I'm for it. As long as it's, like Garrett said, done where the players' safety's in mind, and they're careful about where they're sending people and things. As long as the players are taken care of, first and foremost, I don't really have any problem with it. So,
what, the early morning game? Sorry, I had to step away.
Oh no, I was what I finished with there was, as long as I love having football at 9 a.m. That's great to me, because I can watch a game that leads into the rest of the game. It's football all day. Like, I love that. But what I finished with there was, I just, as long as the players are taken care of and it's done like responsibly in terms of adequate travel time and the players are healthy and you don't see a big uptick in injuries because, we went and played a Thursday night game. Then we went and played internationally. And then now we're back home and our whole team's just like exhausted. Like, as long as they don't end up doing that and the players are taken care of, then I'm cool with it.
Yeah. A lot of the times, especially with these games that are just not very good, I just end up not paying attention to them, to be honest with you. Sometimes I will, but I don't know about you guys. Obviously, I love fantasy football. So what I'll do usually on Sundays is I will wake up. Whenever I wake up, I'll throw on fantasy football now, and I'll just listen to Field Yates and the guys just talking fantasy football all morning. So like sometimes I kind of enjoy that more than some of these crappy London and Munich games and stuff like that. You know, if there's fantasy implications, okay, like yeah, maybe I'll pay attention. Like a Tyrone Tracy or Chuba Hubbard or a Xavier Legette or something like that, if you have them in terms of a fantasy purpose. To me, like that's the only reason why I would kind of pay attention to this game. But I kind of like getting ready, especially if it's a crappy game, like getting ready for the day fantasy wise. And maybe that's a game I'll throw on my phone while I'm watching fantasy football now or something along those lines personally. All right, the last thing that I wanted to get into with the National Football League, I just kind of wanted to end it on just give me like one big thing from this weekend that you're looking out for. I don't care if it's a game, a player, a situation. Give me one big thing that's on your docket that you're excited for this weekend when it comes to the NFL.
Can I go?
Yeah, go
first. Yeah,
all you at the bit, baby.
Yeah.
You know where Marcus is it Marcus Marshawn Lattimore?
Marshawn Lattimore. Doesn't even know his own team.
Is a Washington Commander. Dan Quinn just sent the Ravens out there and said, hey, we're in the market for a cornerback. And all the agents came flooding in. They gave us literally the best guy we could have hoped for. And I just love watching Washington roll. So I'm just taking this in. I've never seen a Washington team look this good since RG3. So I'm just like looking forward to that. They just watching those boys. So that's what my big thing is. I think that's a fun time to be in Washington right now.
If I had to, I think I'm going to go with watching the Rams on Monday night. I know they're playing a Dolphins team that's kind of looking for some success and some get back with Tua now, but the Rams to me feel like a team that their draft picks have kind of come on with Braden Fisk and Jared Verse. They finally are healthy, so Puka's back and Cooper Kupp's back and Stafford's kind of dealing again. So this is a team that I think they started out rough. They were 1-4, and then they've won 3 straight, and they're looking to pick up some momentum as they roll into the second half of the season. If they get a win versus the Dolphins, then they play the Patriots, then they play the Eagles and the Saints. And this is a team that could go from, 1-4 buried and nobody's thinking about to, this team could actually end up making the playoffs. So I think that's something interesting to look out for is the Rams on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, they've shaken back and suddenly they're healthy and they could be the team that wins the NFC West. But one of my things, and I'm going to cheat a little bit because I got a couple of things that I'd like to see this weekend. But when it comes to that division, Christian McCaffrey's supposed to come back this week, and we'll see how much of a difference that makes to the 49ers. They've got a game at Tampa Bay. They're going to go to the pirate ship this weekend. Tampa Bay coming off a hard-fought overtime loss at the hands of the Kansas City Chiefs. And by the way, can we be all in agreement that Todd Bowles screwed the pooch on that one and probably should have just went for 2? Because if you go to overtime and Pat gets the ball first, it's pretty much a done deal.
You saw it all in Baker's reaction.
In the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, you saw Baker's reaction. He knew. Baker knew. He was like, oh, well.
I have a lot of respect for Baker Mayfield nowadays.
I love
battling.
It,
he's battling.
I love Baker's comeback story, man.
Yeah, when you look back, he's not going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, but you're going to look back on a Baker Mayfield story and it's going to be like sort of Kurt Warner light, where like obviously Kurt Warner, he had a lot more success than Baker did early in the year or early in his career, but Baker took a Browns team to the playoffs, somewhere they hadn't been in such a long time, and then got run out of Cleveland, shipped off to Los Angeles and then Carolina and then Tampa Bay. And, now he's getting an opportunity with the Bucs and playing within a good offense and things are flowing there. And so I'm excited about that game. CMC coming back, how that's going to help the offense and Brock Purdy looking out for some big games for some guys there, because that Tampa Bay secondary is not very good outside of Antoine Winfield Jr. And then GT, I really want to watch your game because the Commanders, honestly, like Chase and I were talking about this on Hits 96 this week with Gino D, and
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out to Hits 96 and Gino D for sure. We were talking about the Commanders. We disrespected them in a big way early in the season. Just kind of chalked it up to say, GT, sorry, buddy. It's a rookie quarterback. Probably going to be last in the division. Yeah, it is what it is. But they have been one of the most fun teams to play. They are figuring it out defensively where we thought they were going to be an absolute liability. I'm talking like Ryan Gosling and Remember the Titans type liability. Oof. But they've decided to turn around and be more like Petey. So I'm happy to see that with the Commanders. And this is going to be a tough task against these Steelers. They've got a really good defense. Chris Boswell, one of the best kickers in the National Football League. So you don't have to worry about that. With kickers are missing all over the place nowadays. And then, Russell Wilson's comeback story has been interesting here. Najee Harris is beginning to run the ball really, really well. I know there were some times where we thought Jaylen Warren might take over things, but that's not happening at this point. So I'm looking forward to this game. I'm glad that Jane Daniels is healthy. That's fun as well. And the Steelers just brought in new wide receiver, Mike Williams, and they also got Preston Smith from the Packers as well as adding in another pass rusher into that defensive line. So that's going to be fun and interesting as well. And then the other game I think could potentially be the game of the week. The Lions going up against the Texans on Sunday Night Football. The Lions just came off of a really nice, hard-fought victory against the Packers at Lambeau in the rain and crazy conditions, and they're a fun team to watch as well. And then the Texans, they're 4-0 at home this year. So they may not have been great on the road, but they're figuring it out at home, and they play well at home. So this is going to be a fun game. Nico Collins might be back. We're not sure. He's feeling better, yet it hasn't been put out there that he's going to be all the way back yet. So that'll be a big thing to kind of monitor going into Sunday Night Football. But those are the big things that I'm looking out for when it comes to the National Football League this weekend. Anything else to add? Anybody?
Nah, baby. I got to get back to my baby.
Yeah. Garrett, great to see your face as always. Joseph, you're the man. Thanks for handling business when it comes to college football. Follow us all over social media at Chatted Up Sports. Again, get us wherever you get your podcasts. If you could leave a rate and review, that would be huge for us as well. Subscribe on YouTube is big for us as well. Please, if you could take 2 seconds and go do those things for us, that would really, really help us. And we really appreciate you guys. We love you. We appreciate y'all being here. And Garrett, I was supposed to be just Joseph and I. You're the real hero tonight, just stepping in and stepping up. It was great to have 3 voices on the show tonight because as we've noticed over the last couple of minutes here, I've had to get up and hawk up some mucus. So it is what it is. Leave yourself with that image. We will see you Monday night.